Hey guys.
Very disturbing to hear these things or to kind of see some of the receipts that appear to be connected to it.
Brace yourself for the most dramatic and chaotic political contest in recent recollection. Tiffany Henyard, the self-declared Supreme Mayor of Dalton, Illinois, is fiercely striving to retain her authority as the approaching November election looms. Yet her campaign has spiraled into utter disarray. Once a commanding figure, Henyard now finds herself ensnared in an overwhelming crisis, with her approval rating plummeting to an abysmal single-digit figure. She is currently under the microscope of an FBI investigation, entangled in a potentially catastrophic eviction lawsuit and facing mounting fury from the very constituents who once rallied behind her. Her administration, initially lauded as resolute and authoritative, has since been unmasked as a fragile illusion, leaving her in a desperate battle for political survival. Among the most notorious episodes of her administration was the annual turkey distribution event preceding Thanksgiving, which many denounced as a calculated and insincere ploy to divert attention from the township's deepening financial turmoil. This giveaway, meant to cast Henyard in a benevolent light, instead backfired, exposing her as opportunistic and further amplifying public disdain. However, the turkey handout merely scratches the surface of her mounting predicaments. Henyard's re-election campaign has become a labyrinth of clandestine agreements, manipulative strategies, and increasingly erratic spectacles engineered, solely to maintain her presence in the public domain at any cost. Facing intensified scrutiny, particularly from local activists and officials, Christopher Gonzalez has laid bare Henyard's efforts to force through crucial decisions while circumventing proper legislative protocols. His disclosures underscore Henyard's increasingly frantic maneuvers to retain influence even at the expense of governmental integrity. It has become evident that Henyard's governance is no longer centered on serving her constituency, but rather on clutching onto power by any means necessary. Every move she makes now appears more designed to maintain media relevance than to address the pressing challenges afflicting the town. The community remains unconvinced. Her strategies, brash, theatrical, and progressively ludicrous, have served only to distance voters who are weary of the spectacle and eager for genuine reform. As the FBI probe intensifies and Henyard's approval ratings continue to deteriorate, her campaign has devolved into a frantic battle to sustain her political existence. With the election swiftly approaching, the pressure on her is escalating, and the crucial question lingers: can Henyard miraculously rehabilitate her image, or is this the final chapter in what is poised to be a spectacular downfall? As the decisive election day nears, the stakes have never been higher. Will Henyard manage to regain the trust of the electorate that once placed their faith in her, or will she suffer a resounding defeat in one of the most astonishing political collapses in recent memory? One certainty remains: this political contest will be rife with unexpected twists, strategic gambits, and enough turmoil to etch itself into history. Fasten your seatbelts. This is bound to be an electrifying and turbulent ride.
Those entities, as we know, can take anywhere from 2 months to 5 years.
Tiffany Henyard's leadership in Dalton, Illinois, has become a textbook example of failure, neglect, and broken promises, particularly during one of the harshest winter storms the town has ever experienced. While residents struggled to navigate treacherous, ice-covered streets, Henyard appeared more focused on maintaining her social media presence than on addressing the critical situation at hand. This was not just a failure of leadership, it was a complete abandonment of responsibility. Constituents left to fend for themselves in hazardous conditions were met with a stark and disturbing display of indifference to their safety and well-being. As if this failure were not already severe enough, the town's financial problems have worsened under Henyard's leadership. Allegations of mismanagement, including claims that Henyard misused taxpayer funds to support personal and political interests, have further eroded public trust in her administration. Local businesses have also felt the strain of her governance, with many entrepreneurs openly criticizing her obstructionist tactics, which have made it nearly impossible for them to obtain permits or expand their operations. Lawrence Gardner, a local trucking company owner, publicly shared that his business was forced to close after he refused to donate a substantial sum to Henyard's re-election campaign. In a scathing critique, he compared her to Nino Brown, the infamous drug kingpin from New Jack City, drawing a chilling parallel between her coercive behavior and criminal intimidation. For many, this was not just bad leadership. It was a deliberate attempt to bully and manipulate local businesses for political gain. Public outrage reached a boiling point as residents voiced their growing discontent with the administration's continued dysfunction. "This is embarrassing," one frustrated resident exclaimed at a public meeting, capturing the sentiment of many others who felt betrayed by Henyard's actions. The anger was palpable, and the sense of betrayal deepened, as more people expressed how powerless they felt in a town where their needs and concerns had been ignored. One resident, speaking for many, accused Henyard of being power-hungry, suggesting that she cared little for the community's well-being and was more focused on draining the town's resources to fuel her political ambitions. The mounting resentment was further amplified by accusations that her leadership had driven Dalton to the brink, with financial mismanagement, neglect, and an inability to address basic community needs, leaving the town on the verge of collapse. As pressure mounts, it has become clear that Henyard's grip on power is weakening. Yet, she remains determined to retain control at any cost. Her refusal to step down, despite growing opposition and public outcry, has only fueled the perception that she will do whatever it takes to cling to power, even if it means further alienating the very people she was elected to serve. Despite her ongoing efforts to maintain her position, the cracks in her leadership are becoming more evident. By the day, the future of Dalton under her rule is growing increasingly uncertain. What began as a promising political career has now deteriorated into a messy and divisive struggle for survival. Whether Henyard can salvage any remaining support in the face of mounting criticism remains to be seen. However, the residents of Dalton are fed up, and it appears their patience has finally run out. Adding to the pressure, two of the town trustees, Chris Gonzalez and Carmen Carlisle, failed to attend an important meeting, further complicating Henyard's already shaky position. Without enough board members present, key decisions could not be made, leaving the town in a state of disarray. This situation underscored the dysfunction that has come to define Henyard's leadership, as her inability to maintain control over her own team further damaged her reputation. However, it is not just local grievances that threaten Henyard's hold on power. An ongoing FBI investigation into her re-election campaign has cast a dark shadow over her administration. Federal officials have subpoenaed key financial documents from both Dalton and Thornton Township, including records related to suspicious contracts and allegations of embezzlement of public funds. While Henyard has vehemently denied any wrongdoing, the investigation remains active, raising serious concerns about her political future and whether she can survive the mounting legal pressure. For Henyard, this election is no longer just about securing another term. It is a desperate battle to retain power and avoid potential criminal charges that could arise from the inquiry. The situation in Dalton has become a powder keg of public indignation. The community has grown increasingly frustrated with her administration, marked by blatant financial mismanagement, broken promises, and political dysfunction. These issues have left residents disillusioned, angry, and demanding change. Calls for reform have become a rallying cry as the town faces a leadership crisis. The gravity of the situation was reflected in a comment from a YouTube user who noted that Henyard had won her last election by only a few hundred votes. This highlights just how vulnerable her position is and how easily she could be defeated if enough voters turn out this time. Another comment drew attention to the embarrassment felt by Illinois election officials, questioning how such a scandal-ridden figure was allowed to maintain power in the first place. This criticism brings to light the structural flaws in the II political system that enabled Henyard to rise to power despite multiple warning signs of incompetence and questionable actions. How things spiraled into such chaos is the question on many minds, as residents and political observers alike try to understand how the situation could have deteriorated so drastically. The combination of financial mismanagement, political dysfunction, and the FBI investigation has created a perfect storm for Henyard. With the election fast approaching, it is clear that this is her last opportunity to save herself from both political extinction and legal accountability. The mood in Dalton is one of frustration and urgency, with reform being demanded at every turn. The future of Henyard's political career hangs in the balance. As the town prepares to vote, one thing is certain. Her time in office could be coming to an abrupt and dramatic end. The residents of Dalton are ready for change. Many feel betrayed by their mayor's leadership, and as they head into the election, they are determined to make their voices hear. Whether or not they succeed in removing her from office will depend on voter turnout, public awareness, and the ongoing legal battles surrounding her. However, one fact is undeniable. Tiffany Henyard's unchecked rule is coming to an end. The town is at a crossroads, and its future depends on whether the people can reclaim their voice in the wake of this political scandal. A shadow has fallen over Tiffany Henyard's already troubled administration. Federal officials have subpoenaed key financial documents from both Dalton and Thornton Township, including records related to questionable contracts and allegations of embezzlement of public funds. While Henyard has vehemently denied any wrongdoing, the investigation remains ongoing, raising serious concerns about her political future and whether she can survive the mounting legal pressure. For Henyard, this election is not just a battle. For another term, it is a desperate attempt to hold on to power and avoid potential criminal charges that could arise from the inquiry. The situation in Dalton has become a powder keg of public indignation. The community has grown increasingly frustrated with her leadership, which has been marked by blatant financial mismanagement, broken promises, and political dysfunction. These issues have left residents disillusioned, angry, and eager for change. Calls for reform have become a rallying cry as the town faces a crisis of leadership. The gravity of the situation was reflected in a comment left by a YouTube user who pointed out that Henyard had won her last election by only a narrow margin of a few hundred votes. This highlights just how vulnerable her position is and how easily she could be defeated if enough voters turn out this time. Another comment drew attention to the embarrassment felt by Illinois election officials, questioning how such a scandal-ridden figure was allowed to maintain power in the first place. This criticism sheds light on the structural flaws in the political system that enabled Henyard to rise to power despite multiple warning signs of incompetence and questionable actions. The question on many minds is how the situation spiraled into such turmoil. Residents and political observers alike are trying to understand how Dalton's affairs could have deteriorated so drastically. The combination of financial mismanagement, political dysfunction, and the FBI investigation has created a perfect storm for Henyard. With the election fast approaching, it is clear that this is her last chance to save herself from both political extinction and criminal accountability. The mood in Dalton is one of frustration and urgency, and with reform being demanded at every turn, the future of her political career hangs in the balance. As the town prepares to vote, the only certainty is that Henyard's time in office could be coming to an abrupt and dramatic end. The residents of Dalton are ready for change. Many feel betrayed by the mayor's leadership, and as they head into the election, they are determined to make their voices heard. Whether or not they succeed in removing her from office will depend on voter turnout, public awareness, and the ongoing legal battles surrounding her. However, one fact is undeniable. Tiffany Henyard's days of unchecked rule.
Board meetings. I don't care if you agree or disagree, but you must show up to say yes.
The likelihood of Tiffany Henyard being re-elected is growing, despite mounting legal disputes, a worsening financial crisis, and increasing public disdain for her leadership. This grim reality is underscored by her erratic campaign strategies, the expanding controversies surrounding her administration, and her blatant disregard for the concerns of her constituents. What was once a straightforward political race has now turned into a referendum on her entire tenure as mayor. With the stakes higher than ever, Dalton is struggling with severe financial troubles, including the failure to pay basic bills and an inability to manage essential operations. One former ally of Henyard described the situation as being like a rock symbolizing the town's crushing burden under her leadership.